What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Renewable Energy Smart Pod. I'm your host, Sean McMahon, and today we're going to be discussing something that was a hot topic this summer when temperatures got extremely hot. I'm talking about demand response. A couple of months ago, during one of the heat waves that gripped California, and let's be honest, it seemed like heat waves were everywhere this summer, but anyway, during one of those periods of extreme heat, the California ISO sent out tweets and texts urging consumers to reduce the energy they use to help utilities and other power providers avoid blackouts. That was an example of demand response. And guess what? It worked. My guest today is James Maraca, the Chief Technology Officer at Enersponse. James is going to explain how it doesn't take a crisis for demand response to pay dividends. After all, demand response is when businesses and consumers shift their electricity usage during any peak periods. James is going to explain how the latest demand response technology is making grids more reliable and cleaner. That's right, cleaner. Not only can demand response help consumers take advantage of time-based rates or other forms of financial incentives, but the latest technologies allow businesses and consumers to use more of their energy when the grid is generating more power from renewables. So demand response helps the grid go green and helps businesses and consumers save some green. So I'm excited to get to that conversation with James. But first, here's a quick word from the sponsor of today's episode, ABS Quality Evaluations.
Get serious about sustainability. Assurance services from ABS Quality Evaluations can guide you with ISO certifications for environmental, health and safety, energy management, and more. Our globally accredited experts can help you become energy efficient and save overhead costs. Go to www.abs-qe.com or click on the link in the show notes to learn more.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for today's episode. I'm pleased to welcome my guest, James Maraca. James is the Chief Technology Officer at Enersponse. James, how's it going today?
Good. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to bring you on. Talk a little bit about demand response. You know, a lot of our audience might know what that is and how it functions in the marketplace, but let's kick things off here with a basic question. What is demand response, and what kind of role do you think it'll play in the energy transition?
Sure. Demand response, I guess how I look at it, we look at it, is the utility has a bucket of money that they need to try to accommodate and keep up with people's energy growth within a region. They can spend that on new generation, power plants, solar, whatever else it is, or they can find ways to save energy. And we're on the save energy side. So demand response, we're definitely trying to go out and find customers who have something that they can shut down when prices are high, when grids are stressed, when supply is limited. And those things could be supermarkets, lighting, heating, cooling, refrigeration. It could be a water district with a pump using gravity feed rather than their booster pumps, and manufacturing plants, all kinds of loads. But everybody has something to give. So we're looking at demand response, and specifically automated demand response, as connecting utilities, grid prices, CO2 emissions back to energy management systems on site, and shutting those down at really fine grain periods when the grid needs it most.
Okay, so you give a few examples of how this would work. So say you're at a supermarket and the software is telling them, hey, now would be a time to kind of throttle things back. How long does that last? What kind of levels are we talking about here?
Sure. So every customer is different. Every vertical is different. If we're looking at, say, retail stores, there's not much inside the building, right? You got some lighting, heating, cooling systems. And what we will do is there's a program for everyone. And we go out and try to find customers with limited energy or lots of energy to save, and find a program that fits their needs. So in a retail example, heating, cooling, everyone can give 1-2 degrees of temperature setback for an hour, 2 hours. And then what we do is we receive a signal from the utility from 4 p.m. till 6 p.m. Please shut down. We then pass it on to that retail customer, and they adjust their temperatures by 2 degrees and coast, or allow the building to warm up by a couple of degrees, and all within the comfort range. We want to make sure that customers aren't annoyed, the salespeople and staff inside aren't annoyed, and we don't want to disrupt things. We're looking for those longer term. We want them to participate next time as well. Supermarkets, larger loads, refrigeration, anti-sweat heaters, the thing on the front of the freezer that makes you be able to see the frozen peas. We'd be able to turn those off. They use a lot of energy. Water districts, pumping loads, so pumping water to the top of a hill into a reservoir and then into a tank, and using gravity rather than electrically or a powered pump to shut down those pumps and use gravity as the mechanism for distribution throughout a grid.
So much talk these days in the U.S., in the energy sector specifically, and renewables is all about the Inflation Reduction Act. So how does this demand response technology, what kind of role can it play in that?
Sure. So as in response, we are DR provider, or we're energy markets access for a number of customers, as I said, different verticals across the spectrum. And we do that not necessarily, we don't call a retail store or a supermarket and say, shut something down. What we try to do is, and do is automate all those shutdown activations, right? We connect two systems, heating, cooling systems, energy management, SCADA systems in water and industrial uses, and aim to partner with those control providers, importantly, who gain us access to the controls at those sites. One site in Southern California, as a water district, or maybe you're a local supermarket regional chain with 100 and so on, right? Trying to access all of those en masse. So where I'm going with this in specifically for our IRA is it's the feedback that we're getting from our partners that are going to make a lot of benefit and use from some of the things that are within that. And I guess part of the major feedback that we're getting from control providers or manufacturers, in particular, battery storage, on-site generation for CHPs, or whether it's gensets. One of the big key takeaways is the ITC, the credit for projects, is being increased or extended to 2025, and it gets you 30% off project costs. So one of our go-to market strategies for quite a while, since inception, has been using rebates, whether it's in an auto DR rebate for $200 a kilowatt for a project available for automating load that was there but not necessarily controllable, and putting it into a program. And the ITC extension within IRA is sort of giving a national footprint for that. It's compensating 30% of a project for things that you may have been looking at beforehand, but now it's automating those and allowing those to be available for reliability or curtailment, in our case for DR, when the grid's most stressed. So that's, for our partners, that's the part that we're most excited about.
All right. Now you're the chief technology officer, right? So let's go kind of in the weeds there. What new technologies are either on the marketplace or in the pipeline that will kind of enhance demand response offerings?
Yeah, sure. It's definitely, for us, automation at scale. Typically, demand response and large peak management or energy saving programs have really targeted large loads, multi-megawatt water districts or manufacturing facilities, things that literally on a phone call, you can call and say, shut down your building, shut down your system, and we make a really big visible dent into the energy consumption on the grid. Where, Internet of Things or, cost savings on installed energy management systems across buildings, just the scale of visibility and control has definitely proliferated in industry. So we can connect to one control system, one supervisor system at a corporate headquarters, and from there control 1,000, 10,000 stores at touch of a button or via cloud connection. So for me, being able to continually automate scale of sites, it's bringing on more sites in more markets, but also lower kW sites or curtailable sites, 25 kW, 50 kW, things that, number one, you couldn't call on individually. I couldn't call 1,000 stores across the country and shut down. And it was cost prohibitive to call a single 25 kW site previously. But in aggregate, in a region across the country, by doing an API or an on-site connection or cloud-to-cloud connection, be able to get that scale that hasn't been able to happen before.
All right. Now, if we were going to kind of take this technology and you're not trying to be like NBC Law and Order and ripped from the headlines, but there's been some crises lately, right? There's wildfires in California, there's hurricanes in the Gulf. Are there any examples of how this technology has been used in those cases to reduce demand on the grid?
Yeah, absolutely. DR is demand response is absolutely a tool, that we advocate or is used, is one of those hot day type of tools. In the case of, we see that in California regularly with flex alerts coming down from whether it's the CISO or the governor issuing mandates to shut things down and send text messages to everyone to behaviorally shut down your pool pump and your AC at home. Or whether it's in Texas, when ERCOT had a big freeze and the wind stopped blowing, it was froze over and the clouds covered the solar and, gas generation shut down. We were called on from an emergency reliability standpoint as well. The generation is not necessarily there for various reasons. Can we mitigate the supply? And that's where we come in on the demand side to be able to, can we shut down supermarkets and water districts and so on? So absolutely, we see it as, from a reliability, as temperatures get up, as grid megawatt usage is needed more of, we turning on gas peaker plants, but we're on the other side of hopefully, can we shut down more load that's for a couple of hours to, instead of turning on something, let's shut something off.
I gotcha. Now, so what are some of the specific offerings you and the team at EnerSponse have, for these specific use cases?
Sure. So we're across the country. If I go to programs and then actually how we split up programs as well, across the country in all areas from New York, New England, ERCOT, Texas, TVA, Arizona, California. There's a program for somebody everywhere, right? Typically programs can be 4-6 hours. They could also be on the other side of the scale, 15 minutes, right? Everybody, sites, energy users have a different appetite of how much energy they can shut down. 15 minutes, I can shut down quite a lot. Nobody's going to notice that the heating cooling is not on in my store. However, it may not be applicable for a manufacturing facility to shut down for 15 minutes or stop pumping for 15 minutes because there's ramp downs of motors and back pressure in water districts and so on. But those loads are really good for 4 or 6 hours where a heating cooling can't be shut off for 4 or 6 hours. So we absolutely, we handle this in two ways, is find more programs and partner with different utilities or other program operators across the country to be able to find programs that fit everybody's bucket. But as an aggregator as well, by being able to match up different types of customers together within a portfolio, we're able to give some customers a little bit of the action on a 6-hour program that they may not have been able to have access to before because they're a small users with a big user and vice versa. So it's that flexibility of a portfolio of program access or within our own portfolio that allows us to match customers up.
We'll be right back.
Get serious about sustainability. Assurance services from ABS Quality Evaluations can guide you with ISO certifications for environmental, health and safety, energy management, and more. Our globally accredited experts can help you become energy efficient and save overhead costs. Go to www.abs-qe.com or click on the link in the show notes to learn more.
And now back to my conversation with James Maraca, the Chief Technology Officer at EnerSponse. All right, and I was doing a little bit of digging into your website before we came on today, and I saw there was a couple of programs, the Clean Response and the Price Response program. So price response, pretty straightforward, right? When the prices spike and there's demand, you help your customers kind of throttle back. What's the Clean Response program?
Sure. So both of these are sort of internal programs within EnerSponse. Price response can actually be a little bit more complicated as well, in not just when the energy's price is high, turn something off. These are happening in real-time markets, right? So again, automated loads that can shut down in 5 or 15 minutes because there's a 5 or 15 minute interval where it's high now. But where that gets a bit more complicated is really partnering with utilities or energy retailers, because some of those customers may have index or wholesale market exposure. Say they have 20% of their bill as that wholesale exposure. So when the price goes high, they have exposure to expensive prices. So we're using that as well with utilities. We can use that as a hedge mechanism, or with customers, allowing them to be able to increase their exposure to wholesale, because we're going to cap hopefully their energy usage and tell them it's high, cap their energy usage. So across the average price of a year, they should actually have a lower average price than because they had hopefully we're only reacting to the low parts of those wholesale exposure prices. From a clean response perspective, similar type of mechanism, right? As an aggregator, as somebody, a company who connects to utilities, we have a lot of data, not just prices, but we're seeing how the renewable makeup of a grid versus fossil fuel generation. We understand what the CO2 or greenhouse gas makeup is at any point in time at a top level ISO level or down to a utility or regional level. So what we're able to do is feed that data in and make educated decisions on the grid is dirty now. Let's tell our customers to shut down so that we're actually increasing the CO2 that's reduced off the grid because it's the dirtiest time. On the flip side, the grid is very clean now. Let's turn on the fridges and freezers. Let's soak up some of that, sun or wind that's generating and actually power our buildings from as clean as energy as we can. So you're sort of shifting or adjusting to the cleanliness or dirtiest of the grid as we can.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of folks associate demand response with throttling things back, but your program with Clean, it actually tells them when to crank things up. That's fascinating. So obviously grid resiliency is of paramount importance these days. What kind of role does demand response play there?
Yeah, DR again is really great for resiliency. It's because it's live, because we're automated and understanding what prices are, what generation is being shut down at any given point in time. As we transition to, in quotes, less base load type of generation in solar or wind, and being able to, DR is used as a tool to fill those gaps when maybe the wind isn't blowing as strong and we need to find ways to save energy. Again, looking at hopefully something that's cleaner, shut down a plant and compensate customers that way rather than build another baseload type of generation. So as we transition to renewals, DR will play quite a key role too.
So what kind of role can demand response play, in this ginormous trend we're seeing to shift towards ESG?
Yeah, it's definitely something that a lot of our customers are using demand response, as I said, as one of those tools to be able to reduce their scope 1, 2 emissions. We are, as I said, combining a couple of those things, clean response, and we're building out impact statements. So I know how much energy a customer curtailed or saved during a DR event. I know when they saved it. I know what the CO2 makeup was on the grid at any given time. And what's valuable to our customers is, as an energy manager for a company, to, quarterly report back to our CFO of DR, not just made us dollars, but actually this is our CO2 impact. And it's one of those extra tools alongside LED bulb replacements or, regassing our HVAC units or whatever else that you use. DR is absolutely a tool to have a bigger impact on your emissions.
So it sounds like it's something you can also track across, scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, right? Your own savings and reductions, but also your customers.
And we get a lot of our customers, in that C&I world are supply chain customers, whether they're supermarkets or cold storage or agriculture. So they are, filtering into those other scopes for somebody else as well. So, it's an accounting thing all the way down, and hopefully DR is a great mechanism to pay for some of that accounting and those projects too.
So, one of the things I like to do on this podcast is I ask guests for their bold predictions. Do you have any bold predictions about how demand response will impact markets, and grid sustainability in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
We see in demand response as, another tool that utilities or customers can use in, their cost savings, their grid reliability, and so on, in various different points. And as I said, as we get closer and closer to automation in real time or using CO2 or greenhouse gas emissions, we can start to do a lot more exciting things with that automation. The reality is that there's a bunch of customers who have connected things or sites that have connected things today. And really for bang for buck, it's a really quick thing to implement to get things connected, to start reducing energy and CO2 emissions today. So it's going to, instead of having years worth of, generation build out of any kind, we can start to shut things down, in a month or two with an integration today to quite large customers. So from, getting peak load management under wraps sooner, it's a great tool.
Okay, James. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time. This is very informational and good luck.
Yeah, thank you for your time, Sean, and hopefully chat another time soon.
That's our show for today. But before we get out of here, I want to say one final thank you to our sponsor, ABS Quality Evaluations. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and be sure to follow us on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter, where our handle is @RenewablesPod. And if you'd like a daily dose of renewable news delivered to your inbox, head to smartbrief.com and sign up for the Renewable Energy Smart Brief. The Renewable Energy Smart Pod is a production of Smart Brief, a future company.